On today's show, the LA Clippers losing Paul George to the Philadelphia 76ers in NBA free agency. They were able to retain James Harden and then pivoted immediately and went out and signed Derrick Jones Jr. What other moves can we expect from the Clippers, and are they still contenders in a stacked Western Conference? It's all coming up on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, I love sports. I love them so much. I never really want them to stop, right? But as you got the playoffs winding down and you get fewer and fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like the way you wanted to, look, FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up big bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Right now, you can head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and take a look at the outright betting favorites for the NBA championship next season. The Boston Celtics at plus 300 to repeat next year. The Denver Nuggets behind them at plus 750. And in third place, after freshly signing Paul George, the Philadelphia 76ers at plus 850. So for all those odds and so much more, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. And joining us now is the host of Locked On Clippers, Darian Vaziri, who can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Clippers. And Darian, it looks like the Paul George saga has officially come to an end for the Los Angeles Clippers. This has been a long, drawn-out contract negotiation process, and then neither side were able to come to terms on a deal that they both felt happy about. Darian, let's start right here. Just how would you kind of sum up Paul George's time as a Clipper, and then subsequently also how he's chosen to leave the team here in free agency?
His time as a Clipper has been a lot more down than up, a lot more bad than good, if we're being real, Jackson. I think the only year, well, he had 2 good years. If you look at statistically, he had 5 good years. But for his expectations, 2021-22, and then the 2020-2021 season where we made it to the conference finals and he got us there without Kawhi, those final 2 games against Utah. That was his crowning moment as a Clipper. That was one of the greatest moments in franchise history. When we got Kawhi and Paul George, we never felt like when we break that second round curse. And as a Rockets fan, you guys were part of it. The 3-1 in 2015. I mean, and then another 3-1 lead blown. And, 5 years later, we just needed to get out of that second round first. And the fact that Paul George was the star leading us across that finish line was just something that I never expected. But, man, the guy left a lot to be desired. A very inconsistent star who relies a lot on contested jump shots and would often have bad games. And then you just don't know what kind of player you're going to get. He says things like, I'm a glue guy sometimes, like he downplays how good he is. And then other times he complains about how he's not getting the ball enough and stuff like that. So it seemed like nothing could ever satisfy him. He always wanted a point guard, he and Kawhi. He's just being more vocal about it because he does just speak more. So, I mean, as a Clipper, I would say a lot of bad, a lot of not being able to achieve expectations, but also being let down by his co-star's health. I think Kawhi Leonard's injuries were just the thing that held this pairing back the most. But, him leaving now is a shock. He's leaving behind his family, his parents being able to be at every single game, what he started, what he pledged to this franchise and said he was going to win a championship. And he's leaving because the Clippers didn't want to offer him a 4th year on the deal. And they re-signed Kawhi this January to a 3-year deal. So they wanted all the contracts to align. They didn't want to be paying Paul George for longer. And also they didn't want to go over that second apron, which for people that aren't familiar, that's the reason why we're here. If there weren't those second apron penalties, I don't think the Clippers would have had a problem paying Paul George. But, losing and freezing more picks, you're getting them moved down to 30, which are some of the penalties for being over that second apron multiple years. We might have lost or essentially lost or had the 30th pick for 2031 and 2032. And with the fact that we have already given up all our picks for Paul George, we don't want to give up any more of our future. It's just, so the Clippers were in a very tough spot, and it's a disaster that they've lost Paul George after giving up everything for him. It really is, but I think it would have been also a disaster paying him and going over that second apron for multiple years. So it's a terrible situation. And I think Paul George got a good one out of it, but we didn't.
Kind of feel it really did almost feel like a lose-lose situation here for the Clippers. Now, I will say I've also never seen an organization issue, I guess, an official goodbye statement to a player before they've like joined a new organization. I think that might be a first that we've seen one of those go around. And I know you shared this on social media and it crossed my radar, but just like the gathering of like quotes from PG right throughout his career, right? Indiana, then OKC, now the Clippers, right? Where he says, in Indiana, my goal is to win one here. I never want to leave Indy. Then he says the same thing again in OKC. I'm here to stay. We can bring this thing home. Says it again as a Clipper. This is where my heart is. I want to retire a Clipper. So who knows what the next thing is going to be, if there's a next thing, depending on what team ultimately signs PG-13. Looking like the 76ers are the front runners to land his services moving forward. But some good news for the Clippers, though. They did manage to pivot. It looks like so losing PG-13. All right, cool. No love lost there. They pivot. They signed Derrick Jones Jr. to a 3-year deal worth $30 million, so average annual value $10 million a year. That's a really great pivot. All right, like to just okay, you lose PG-13 immediately. The Clippers front office, they're figuring out how do we pivot from this? How do we fill that role on this team? And I think you could do a lot worse than Derrick Jones Jr., who's a great defender.
Yeah, I'm very happy about that, actually, Jackson. I think whether your team is, I guess, Derrick Jones Jr. is a guy that is right now is best served as being a role player for Stars. It's definitely a big loss for Dallas. He was a starter this year on a finals team, basically clamped Paul George in that series against us. And Clippers needed more athleticism. And he is that to a T, one of the highest leapers in the league, and a guy that can guard the point of attack to throw alongside Terrence Mann. Not bad. Is it the adequate replacement for Paul George? Absolutely not. But it's just, moves around the margins to still make the Clippers competitive, which I think, if we're being honest, Jackson, like the Clippers have very minimal chance, in my opinion, no chance to win a championship anymore. I already would have said that even if they kept Paul George, because I just think that Kawhi's health is too much of a wild card. And I think Harden is best served to be a third option now, not a second. But Derrick Jones will help. I mean, it'll help James Harden and Kawhi, and you never know, if you get Kawhi healthy, you can make some noise. So the problem is the Clippers are going into a new stadium and they have no draft picks, so they're not going to tank or rebuild right now. So
yeah, it's kind of it's a really tough position to be in here, and I find it curious that you're saying even if they hadn't, or even if they had kept PG-13, because at least then PG-13 Kawhi, you're still running it back, you've still got James Harden in tow, right? You can maybe make those moves at the margin to try to fill out the rest of the roster and run things back, health permitting, and hopefully make some noise there. But as it stands right now, if you do have a healthy Kawhi Leonard, a healthy James Harden, and then the right pieces around them, you don't think that team can still make some noise in the West?
Make some noise, yes, but I really think that there's a difference between making noise and winning it all. And I have a very hard time believing that, one, Kawhi Leonard can stay healthy for a full playoff run all the way to the title, and two, James Harden, and he had a good postseason last season, but in the highest levels, conference finals, second round finals, as a second option at age 35, makes me very skeptical. And yeah, that's what I have to say about that. I just think that the level to win a championship is very high. We're very far away from being as good as Boston, and that's the standard right now. And yeah, but I'm still waiting for Kawhi to have a signature moment in front of the Clipper fans, in terms of a full Clipper crowd. It hasn't happened yet in the playoffs, so maybe it'll happen now without Paul George.
We also know that there are some reported rumors about the Clippers' interest in trading Russell Westbrook, which honestly is kind of rough around the, like, considering kind of how this whole Russ saga has played out with his Clippers tenure, right? I mean, he embraces this role with the Clippers, and then he gets moved to the bench, almost like an afterthought with the whole acquisition of James Harden. He embraces that role. He's like, what, I'll do whatever it takes to win. And now he opts into his player option for his contract, but they're like, hey, we're exploring trades for him and everything. It just feels like a tough shake for Russ at this point, I think.
Yeah, it's very interesting with Russ. What does he want? Does he want to? Because for me, I know he wants to start, but is there any team out there that's going to let him start? Because if not, I don't understand how the Clippers
is any team with Russell Westbrook right now starting a winning basketball organization is the real question.
Probably not. Well, I don't think they're a championship team, but if he's around stars, like I think if you would put him around Paul George and Kawhi before we got Harden, I still think we were a playoff team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that would be a decent role for him. But he has to play with stars that don't need to pound the ball and stuff. I'd say stars that can work off the ball. That's the only way. It would have to be very tailored to him. But yeah, they probably wouldn't be a winning team. I mean, they definitely wouldn't be a championship team, I don't think. So that's the thing. Like, if Russell Westbrook wants to start, I don't know if any team would start him. If he wants to come off the bench, I don't know how different that's going to be than being on the Clippers. I think the Nuggets thing is fairly enticing because they don't have a backup. Reggie Jackson was nowhere near good enough, and they really lacked some stuff off the bench. But you're still coming off the bench, and you're still playing behind Murray and Jokic, who are going to get 30+ minutes a game. So I don't know if that's going to be that much different. So I don't know what he wants. It's sad though. It's clear that he wants more than what the Clippers are giving him, but who knows?
How else will the LA Clippers pivot in the aftermath of losing Paul George? What other moves will they have on the horizon? You're going to have to cover for all of that and so much more over at Locked On Clippers. Darian, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Anytime.